Trucker Dump for October 12th, 2011, Episode 76, The Spitting Christian Zealot.
Welcome to Trucker Dump, where you'll get one driver's insights and sometimes humorous views of truck driving and the trucking industry, and pretty much anything else he feels like dumping on you. This podcast is brought to you by AboutTruckDriving.com. Resources that help you understand the world of truck driving through the use of stories and a pathetic attempt at humor.
God bless, people. Todd McCann here. After hearing that title, I imagine some of you are ready to abandon ship. Please don't. This podcast may surprise you. I'm not a pulpit-pounding Bible thumper, but I am a Christian. If you give me a chance, I'll prove I'm not a wacko. And thus begins the story of the spitting Christian zealot. And yes, those were air quotes around the word Christian. Advance warning here. Other than the fact that a conversation I had with a fellow company driver brought it on, this post has very little to do with trucking. It does have to do with the intolerant and sometimes violent reputation that Christians are getting nowadays. Please don't tune me out yet. This isn't a preaching lecture. I'm not qualified for that. I'd just like to explain to you how the Bible says Christians are supposed to act in today's world. These are just my views from what I've learned. Take them or leave them out by the street with all the dirty diapers and empty pizza boxes. Real Christians don't picket military funerals and shout at funeral processions. Real Christians don't scream about damnation to tornado victims. Real Christians don't yell that gay people are going to hell. Real Christians don't verbally abuse women coming out of an abortion clinic. And real Christians don't spit on you when they talk. And that brings me to the driver I spoke with the other day. Let's call him Bruiser, just because he looked like his mama might have named him that. In all fairness, Bruiser never actually spit on me, but trust me, that was only because there was elevation and a truck door between us. At first, Bruiser seemed like a normal trucker. He was a big fella, probably 6'3" and 260 pounds. He had a bald head and was wearing a U.S. Army baseball cap and a big old salt and pepper goatee. I made a mental note to thank him for his military service before we parted, but I didn't much feel like it by the time it was all over. The conversation started out normal. He asked what the sign on my passenger side window was. He was happy to learn that the Colorado scales wouldn't pull you over every time if you put the last 8 digits of your VIN, that's vehicle identification number, on the passenger side of the truck. There's my trucking info quota. But the conversation changed when my hatred for e-logs came up. That's when he started talking about the government wanting to control everything. You can imagine the Obama rant that followed. Now, I'm not a fan of big government, so I was actually agreeing with some of what Bruiser was saying. But then he started to get excited and the spittle started to show itself. He started to get a lot louder, too. Turns out he was a Christian, or so he said. Within about 15 minutes, he said, "I'm not a racist, but..." about 5 times. I figured that means he's probably a racist. He basically said that the black communities in America were suffering the highest rates of violent crimes because they also have the highest rates of abortion and children out of wedlock. He went on to say that as a Christian, he was called to rebuke the wicked. His word, not mine. He said that if a Christian politician had the gonads to stand up and boldly rebuke all the homosexuality, abortion, and black people's sin, that he or she would easily be elected the next president. That's when things started to get out of hand. I told him I was a Christian too, but that I didn't agree with him. I told him that anyone who spoke out like that wouldn't stand a chance of being elected. Politicians have a hard enough time getting the opposing party's votes as is. Start getting radical like that and everyone would back off from him, or her, even their own party. I also told him he'd never win any non-believers to Christ by yelling at him. It was immediately apparent that this guy was not the kind of guy that liked opposing views. Well, I've got to tell you that Bruiser lost it. I mean, he went bonkers. Spit literally started to fly out of his mouth. He started talking about nations saying, "Yay or nay," and he'd pause at the end of a tirade and say, "Praise the Lord." Now, I may not be the brightest LED in the taillight, but I'm not a total imbecile either. But I can honestly say, from that point on, I had no earthly idea what he was talking about. Especially with that whole yay or nay thing. I'm certain he understood himself, but I was at a total loss. After a couple more heartfelt "Praise the Lords," he went about hooking up his trailer. I couldn't help but notice he was breathing hard from his verbal workout. It was too bad that I had to be at my shipper in 30 minutes. I had so many things to say to him, although I realized it wouldn't have done a lick of good. You really can't talk reasonably to zealots, especially spitting ones. So instead, I'll tell you what I was going to tell him. Just for the record, I'll be referencing some Bible verses here. All the links to these will be in the show notes. First, real Christians aren't supposed to be racist. Jesus said to love one another. That's John 13:34 and 35. That's pretty clear. You can't love someone and hate them at the same time. Heck, Jesus even said to love your enemies. That's Matthew 5:43 through 48. Now, to be honest, I probably wouldn't have called Bruiser out on this. Because he'd already stated that he wasn't a racist 5 times. Still, I thought I'd point that out to any non-believer who thinks Christians are racist. We're not. Or we shouldn't be. Is there punishment for consequences? You bet. Even a toddler jumping back from the oven screaming a profane word he didn't learn from you could tell you that. Pretty much everyone believes in the concept of what comes around goes around. Some people call it karma. Christians know it as you reap what you sow. That's Galatians 6:7. So, could the black community be suffering from high crime rates because of abortion and the fact that 67% of black children are growing up in single-parent homes? I suppose it could. There's a link to an article with that stat in the show notes. Could the world be suffering more natural disasters because of some of the biblically immoral choices our society has taken? That just might be the case. Could sexually transmitted diseases be the consequences of a society who commits biblically immoral acts? It sure could. At least according to the Bible, it could. The Bible is full of instances where God disciplines his people for their rebellion and their poor choices. Most non-believers hate the thought of that. They say that God is a vengeful God and that he doesn't have any right to tell us how we should act. Well, if you're a Christian, you believe he's your creator, so he actually does have a say in the matter. I'd also like to point out that God doesn't punish his children to hurt them. He does it to protect them. Do you discipline your child to protect them from doing stupid things? So does God. Despite what most non-Christians think, God wants what's best for you. Need some proof? Okay. First, let me say that I'm not casting the first stone. I'm a sinner. I know it, and I struggle with it every day. I always will. I was raised in the church, but totally rebelled from my teens until I was almost 40 years old. Why did I rebel? For the same reason I think most non-believers deny God. Because I didn't want to be held accountable for my actions. No one likes to be told what to do and how to act, but sometimes it's in our best interest. For example, if a boy and a girl grew up under the guidance of biblical teaching and remained sexually pure until they married each other, what are the chances of either of them getting a sexually transmitted disease? Well, unless they're purposefully rubbing their junk on public toilet seats, the chances are minuscule. And before you nitpickers can attack, yes, I do realize fetuses can get HIV during pregnancy. If that same couple got married, what are their chances of divorce? According to studies, it's in the low single-digit percentage. That's compared to the almost 50% divorce rate the rest of us suffer from. How much emotional and physical damage do you bring into a marriage if you've had other sex partners? I'll bet everyone listening to this has suffered a breakup that would have been a heck of a lot easier if sex hadn't been involved. How about teen pregnancy? Pretty hard to get all preggers if you aren't doing the deed. You see, God is trying to protect you by showing you what not to do. How about something like murder? God doesn't want us to kill because he values life and knows that it'll be something you'll deal with for the rest of your life. Now I know what's coming next. How can Christians be against abortion but in favor of capital punishment? To that, the Bible points out that governments were established to maintain justice. Barring some freak anomaly, if a criminal's on death row, they've done something to deserve it. A judge and 12 jurors said so. These jurors are citizens just like you and me. The same citizens that elected the judge and decided whether their state will enforce capital punishment or not. If you don't like that, you're welcome to move to another state where the death penalty doesn't exist and like-minded people abound. But what has that fetus done to deserve death? But wait, you say, is it alive if it isn't born yet? Well, its heart is beating. Is yours? Are you alive? Yes, I guess it's true that a fetus doesn't really know what's going on, but neither does a person who's in a coma for 9 months. Should we kill them too? Now, if the mother's life is in jeopardy, well, someone has to lose, and that's unfortunate. But are most abortions done because of real physical risk to the mother? No, other than the fact that she just won't look right in her new bikini. Actually, the stats show that women who have abortions have greater risks in lots of factors. Check out the link in the show notes for an article on that. Once again, God is looking out for you. What about something as simple as lying? The 9th commandment says it's a sin. There's a link to the 9th commandment, too. This commandment also pertains to lying to accuse someone falsely. Don't you just hate having to apologize to someone when you've been caught in a lie? I do. Do you like it when people spread lies about you? If you do, you're some kind of weirdo. Again, God is your bud here. He doesn't want you to have to go through that. I'd like to address one more controversial issue: homosexuality. The Bible clearly teaches that it's a sinful act. That's in 1 Timothy 1:10. I've heard many gay people say, "Why would God design me this way if I'm not supposed to be this way?" This is a rough one. From what I've learned, it's because this is a fallen world. In the beginning, man chose to rebel against God. We've been paying for it ever since. We come out of the womb with a sinful nature. What? You don't believe that? Do you have to teach a toddler to lie? No. Now they're quite bad at it, but they try nonetheless. Do you have to teach a child to be selfish? How about disobedient? I gotta tell you, my nephews have been pushing against the evil overlord in me since the moment they could crawl towards the poor, unsuspecting, sleeping cat. Having said all that, here's something most people don't know, and quite frankly, I struggle with myself. To God, all sins are equal. He hates a simple little white lie as much as he hates me taking an axe to someone's face. For one person, their sin might be anger issues. For another, it might be homosexuality. Whatever your particular poisons are, we're taught to resist them. Still, we're not perfect. That's why it's so awesome that he's a forgiving God to those who believe in him. Do I personally think lying or dude-on-dude action is as bad as an axe to the face or cheating on your spouse? No, I don't. The thing is, I'm not God. Neither are you, and neither is Bruiser. And that leads us to wrap this puppy up. Some say Christians are not to judge. Bruiser says we are. Who's right? I'll go a happy medium with you. The Bible says, "Do not judge, or you too will be judged." That's Matthew 7, 1-5. But does that go for both people and actions? Well, in the next verse, it talks about judging others. I mean, if we didn't judge actions, how would we discern right from wrong? But it's God's job to judge people, so I'll leave that up to him, and you should too. In close, Christians should try to treat non-believers like Jesus would. He was kind to all sinners, yet firm in his beliefs and standards. I love the story of the woman who was caught in adultery and was about to be stoned to death. That's in John chapter 8, verse 2-11. Jesus said, "He without sin cast the first stone." When no one chucked the first rock at her, he told her, "Go and sin no more." You see, he wasn't mean to her because she was being a naughty girl. He didn't yell at her about sleeping around or cram a Xerox of the 7th commandment down her throat, nor did he excuse her sin. Now, pretty much every person in the galaxy, even non-Christians, will acknowledge Jesus as the most moral character in all of history. And if that's the way he treats people, then that's how we should do it too. After all, the word Christian does mean Christ-like. The Bible also tells Christians to teach the truth in love. That's Ephesians 4:15. And we all know actions speak louder than words. Therefore, I'm pretty sure that doesn't include yelling at people, being a bigot or racist, slandering someone, or just plain being a mean old jerk. So for St. Pete's sake, you psycho Christians out there, quit yelling and spitting on people.
Hey, yo, bud, where do you want this load of feedback?
Holy moly, people. The last podcast was the one called Who's a Trucker? And I asked y'all to write in and tell me whether you're a trucker or a truck driver and why. I wasn't expecting to get this many hits, but man, oh man, I hate to leave anybody out, so I'm just going to read them all, which makes this a marathon episode. So let's get cooking. Lance says, I agree with you. When I come home, the last thing I want to do is go somewhere. I just drove 500 miles today. Why would I want to go out or talk about truck driving? To me, it's just a job where I can earn the most money possible, then go home. Well, Lance, that's pretty much the way I feel. Ashley F. pipes in and says, yeah, I agree. I hate talking about work. I work to make money. It's not my life. And Danielle says, my husband's a truck driver. I'm proud of him for the sacrifice he's making, being gone up to 8 weeks at a time, etc. I consider myself a trucker's wife. He considers himself a driver. Nothing more. I'm proud of him for standing up to the big dogs when the equipment is broken and they want him to haul it anyway, even though the primary reason he's refusing to haul a broken trailer is to protect the CSA. I have much more respect, and I had a lot of it before, for truck drivers. They deal with much more beep than someone who only spends an hour or two a day on the highway. Super trucker, truck driver, or the guy who's out there to do a job and get home. Doesn't matter. You all are truckers. Thanks for writing in, Danielle. Yeah, with the CSA in effect, we truckers are going to have a lot more small repairs done than we wouldn't have before. I'm sorry, but no one can convince me that replacing a burned out license plate bulb or a tiny marker light that's 13 feet 6 in the air and nestled beside 2 other identical lights will keep an accident from happening. I do the same thing as your husband. I nitpick every little thing now. I do so for 2 reasons. 1, to protect my CSA score, and 2, to annoy the crap out of my company in hopes they'll someday stand up and fight against this CSA crap. As for your respect for truckers, thanks. If only everyone was related to a trucker in some way. They seem to be the only folks who knows what's going on with trucks and truckers. Humble Floyd says, sounds like you'd rather be doing something else. Too bad. I have other options, but I like what I do. I don't think or talk about it much on home time. Someone might ask where'd you go on this trip. I take photos and share them. Snow-capped mountains, Joplin after the Twister, things I wouldn't see in a normal job. And this is not a normal job. A lot of people can't do it. I'm a pro. I put safety and courtesy first, and I'm proud of what I do. Am I a trucker? A driver? I don't know. It's not my whole life, but it's my job, and it's great to have a job doing something I enjoy. Well, Humble Floyd, perhaps I misspoke a bit. I don't hate the job itself. I just hate that it makes me be away from home so much. I actually think driving a truck is kind of fun. No boss breathing down my neck, plenty of time to listen to audiobooks, music, or podcasts, beautiful scenery. I honestly think I wouldn't mind trucking for the rest of my life if I could make the money I do now, but be at home more. Of course, we both know that isn't the way it works. I'm glad you enjoy the job. We need more drivers like you. Thanks for leaving your thoughts. And Darkstaff pops up and says, I'll chime in on this one. I consider myself a driver. Why do I say that? Because after many years of doing this job and thinking to myself, there's got to be something better, I've decided to make this my better. I've been divorced twice now. And now that I'm free of family constraints and a home, I'm able to do what I do behind the wheel without any obligation or guilt. The obligation of getting home in time for that special event, the guilt for not making it due to circumstances beyond my control. I'm in a great place, all said and done. My bills are minimal. I can buy nice things, mostly tech, whenever I have the money for them. I enjoy myself out here, even the bad times. They make for great stories. Now, I understand that the vast majority of people cannot do what I do, and that's live out here. They have families, friends, and social obligations they've made for themselves. I understand the why of not wanting to fully commit to the title of trucker. But for those of us, the few, like myself, it's more than the job. It's not even a lifestyle. It's a life. Saying that came from some serious hardcore self-evaluation and contemplation. So yes, for the time being, I'm a trucker. Now here's the shocker. I don't have a CB in my rig. I shower often. I wear clothes that fit, look good, and are in good repair. I'm intelligent, well-read, and highly opinionated. I don't like NASCAR. I'm sure that'll ruffle a few feathers. And I keep to myself. I won't talk your ear off about anything unless you ask me to. And I damn sure will never be the guy who commands the entire room to listen to him because he knows he's perfect. Silence and few words go a lot farther, in my humble opinion. There you have it. I'm a trucker because it's all I have at the moment. Someday, someone may see my photography and hire me for my eye. Until then, I'll guide this rolly house down the road. Pieces. Good to hear from you, Darkstaff. See there, once again a stereotype fails. I guess I can't really expect the general public to not stereotype truckers if I'm guilty of doing it myself. The weird thing is, I know better. I'm not the stereotype. You aren't either. Perhaps half of my truck and Twitter friends aren't either. As for your situation, I've told countless people just what you've said. If you're single and unattached, truck driving is perfect for you because you don't have many obligations. Good call on that one. Thanks for dropping by and sharing your thoughts, Eric, and pieces back to you. And by the way, folks, Eric is an awesome photographer. There'll be a link to some of his photos in the show notes. Check them out. Becca says, unfortunately, not many people like what they do, including myself. I sit in a cubicle staring at documents on a computer all day. However, I am grateful every day I have a job because many people don't. I really like this blog because I agree with you. My future father-in-law has been a truck driver for so many years, he couldn't think about doing anything different. That's when you have trucker status. Truth is, it's scary to think about changing jobs, especially a totally different one in this economy. I guess we just have to make the best of the situation for now till it can change. Your job identity is what you make of it. Just felt like sharing. Well, thanks for sharing, Becca. I think you've nailed one of the biggest problems. Very few people are happy with their current occupation. The grass is always greener on the other side. Only it's not. I'm sure that if I ever manage to become a pharmacist, that one day I'll look back and see how good I had it out here on the road. Of course, the better paycheck and being home every night will help to ease my pain. I've never thought of it like that. You have trucker status when you can't imagine yourself doing anything else. I guess that might explain why the evil overlord and I never considered ourselves truckers. From the very beginning, we only planned truck driving to be a means to an end. Our initial plan was 2 to 3 years. Somehow, it managed to engulf 14 years of my life, and 9 of hers. As for the scariness of switching jobs, the evil overlord and I are both worried about that right now. The economy sucks, and jobs are tight. Add to the fact that the school we'll be attending is in a town that just got demolished by a tornado earlier this year. So the jobs are really suffering there. We don't have a clue how this is going to work going to school and working. But at some point, you just have to jump off the 14-story building and trust that God has attached the bungee cord. Thanks again for stopping by. Great insights. And by the way, congrats on your upcoming nuptials. Y'all may remember that I mentioned Alan Q. Bristol in the podcast and whether or not he considered himself a trucker or not. And I didn't think he probably did. Well, he wrote in. Here's what he had to say. Just to clarify my personal outlook, there's nothing wrong with being a trucker or driver or whatever you prefer to call yourself. It's just that people have used that to pigeonhole me at times. Todd and I have both discussed the concept of, yes, I drive a truck, but that does not define me. Like Darkstaff, Todd, perhaps Humble Floyd, and a number of others, we do what we do, and do it professionally, but don't want to be confined to a narrow definition or a stereotype someone saw in a film or old television show. Nothing wrong with driving a truck. My great-grandfather, grandfather, great-uncle, uncle, father, and for a short while, my mother have all done it. Several friends still do it day in and day out and take pride in doing it well. And I will always respect a person who does his or her job in a safe, courteous manner. It's just that we'd sometimes rather discuss other things and have the background and experience to do so. Ever read War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy? It's long, but I'm working on it right now. Not because I want to lord it over anyone, but because I've been curious for a long time about what's in it. Trucker, truck driver. They both fit to various degrees. 6 of one, half dozen of the other, perhaps. Just don't box us in. Men and women behind the wheels of Class 6 through 8 trucks have varied experiences, talents, hobbies, and relationships. That's all. You know, Alan, that seems to be the key. The difference is in the mind of each person. I guess enough said on that. And hey, congrats on working your way through War and Peace. I've been meaning to order a copy of that. My bedroom door won't stay open. Thanks for stopping by and blessing us with your presence. And finally, told you there was a lot of comments, I got a comment from a guy named John Mack. Now, I need to set something up on this one, so bear with me. It's going to be a bit longer. I'm going to fill you in on something that happened. I put it up on Google Plus because it was a little too short for a blog, way too long for Twitter. So here's the story on Google Plus. There'll also be a link to this story in the show notes. Here goes. First time for everything. I'm from Missouri. I'm currently in a Wendy's in Denver, Colorado. And that's when it happened. I was trying to get my thoughts back on the blog post I was working on. As you can guess, a talkative trucker had interrupted me. This, despite the fact that I had my earbuds in to avoid such a catastrophe. Anyway, that's when the cop walked up. I looked up as he stood there looking down at me. I didn't know what to say. We just looked at each other. Then he said, "Is your name Todd?" Shocked, I questioningly said, yeah. He said, "Todd McCann?" Even more apprehensive, I nodded, yes. He said, "Did you know the city of Denver has a warrant for your arrest?" Flabbergasted, I said, no, what for? My mind started racing, trying to figure out what I could have possibly done. My only 2 preventable accidents were in Denver, but that was years ago. What had I done? Had I forgotten to pay a ticket? Then he said it. Indecent exposure. Now, I haven't spent a lot of time in Denver, so I was racking my brain trying to think when the last time that I showed my junk to anyone other than the evil overlord. Then he smiled. Chuckling at my discomfort, he said, "Nah, I thought I recognized you sitting there. I read your blog." Whew, what a relief. And a shock. I don't have a lot of readers, but here was one in the flesh. Curious, I asked how he found the blog. Like most people I've asked, he couldn't remember. I asked if he was on Twitter. He was, but he didn't follow me. He did know our fellow driver, Trucker Steve, so that must have been where the connection was. He said he really enjoyed the blog and said I did a good job. Then he gave me a business card and told me to holler at him next time I was in Denver. Pretty cool, huh? Of course, the best thing was that I hadn't flashed some poor, unsuspecting old lady. That's pretty wild, huh? Okay, back to John Mack and when he wrote in. He said, "Great to meet you in person. I'm just glad that you had, in fact, cleared up that little matter here in Denver and that I did not have to take any official action. Hope your travels are safe and feel free to email or call next time you head to Denver." And he put a link to a really cool Trucker Steve video. You guys need to check that out. The link's in the show notes. The video is kind of based on the whole Who's a Trucker theme. Well, you see what I'm dealing with here, folks? The first stranger I meet who actually reads my blog, and he makes me drop a load in my drawers. Seriously funny stuff, though. I wouldn't have it any other way. And John, it was good to meet you too. I have to admit, though, I'm a bit ashamed of myself. I didn't even know your name until you handed me your card. It's very rude of me not to ask. Of course, I was in a bit of a state of shock at the time, so maybe you'll give me a bit of leeway. And finally, that's all of them. I swear, no more today. Man, this is going to be a long episode. Sorry you guys had to sit through it. You know, like I said, I got all these comments and I didn't want to leave anybody out. I know one of these days if I start getting a whole lot of comments, I'm going to have to start picking and choosing just certain ones. But right here in the beginning, it's just kind of fun to go ahead and read whoever writes in. I know I always enjoy it when I hear a podcaster read something that I've written in. Just makes you feel all warm and fuzzy inside. So how can you get heard on the podcast? Info to follow. Okay, people, I'm interested to hear what kind of comments I get on today's podcast. Although I don't know how anyone could take this as insulting, mean, or holier than thou, I'm sure someone will. Write in and let me know what you think. Just type Zealot into the search bar at abouttruckdriving.com, find the post, and leave your thoughts in the comments section. Email works too. That'd be truckerdump@gmail.com. I hang out on Twitter a lot too, so look for Todd McCann over there. That's 2 D's, 2 C's, and 2 N's. No spaces. And can I ask a favor? I'm not on Facebook, and I don't want to be, but I know it's power. So I'd appreciate it if you'd spread the word over there if you like what you hear. Thanks. So until next time, drive safe, and stay out of my way.